Hey guys, CDTVThaG here, and the G of course stands for Goose. We're coming back strong with that one. And today I'm going to be reacting to the new album from my favorite rapper, Good Intentions by NAV. Last album was Bad Habits, this one is Good Intentions. His mind.
I'm a late bloomer, third year on the scene. 20 racks don't feel like nothing to me. Came from the streets, it turned me to a beast. Invisible set diamonds hugging my piece.
There we go. It's perfect. So, in all seriousness, let me cover this up while I give my actual thoughts on NAV. There's one of two things that I want this album to be. I either want this album to be surprisingly good, you know, a lot of people like Turks, I thought the song was okay. I can see why they see more potential in NAV from that song. Or I'm expecting this album to be overwhelmingly, laughably bad. And either way, I would be entertained by either of those. Surprisingly good, I'd have a good time. Laughably bad, I would have a good time. If it's somewhere in the middle, if it's just a bad album, I'm not gonna like it. If it's just kind of mediocre, I'm not gonna like it. Alright, let's bring the number one NAV stan cat back out. We've got 18 songs, around 50 minutes of NAV music on here. 2 features from Young Thug, a Lil Uzi feature, a Future feature, Don Toliver, Pop Smoke. I like the look of the features on this album. And of course, don't think it passed by me, I see the track on here called Brown Boy. I'm excited for that one. Also, you may have noticed I've got a new lighting setup, so it doesn't look like you need night vision goggles to actually see me against the dark background in my videos. And I also have a new microphone. We've got some upgraded equipment just for you, NAV. Just for Good Intentions. That's why I bought this equipment. So, let's just jump right into it. Track number 1. Good Intentions intro.
This shit don't know about cause I don't take no credit. Stay on my mission till the day my time is finished. When you catch a case, I pay the lawyer, get it acquitted. Gotta get another pint before this one is finished. Talk to me nicely or don't talk to me at all. Even though they want me.
Ooh.
Brown boy going up this year, I'ma make sure that they feel me. Pockets are healthy, yeah, I fill them up with ladies.
The second verse on that was nice. I like the melodies, the flows he was going for. Yeah, he doesn't have the most lively voice, but I wasn't expecting that. This is a decent intro. And the production is good on it, and NAV had a hand in the production on this track, so gotta give him credit there as well. That first song could have been much worse. The chorus was like, okay, his voice probably sounded the most dead on that chorus across this whole song, but I like the way on the second verse those very kind of rapid, short synths came into the beat, and I think the way he flowed over it was nice. As far as NAV tracks go, and based off of what I expect from a NAV song, this intro was a relatively solid start to this project. But then again, I liked To My Grave off of Bad Habits, and then it just kind of nosedived quite a bit after that. So we'll see if this project does the same, but I do have high hopes for the next track because we have a Young Thug feature on the next track. Thug is almost always entertaining, so we'll see what he does on here. Track number 2, No Debate, featuring Young Thug.
I'm ballin' like I got a triple double. Diamonds biting back and needle muzzle. I don't got a vibe I can't replace.
Why did this beat sound better in the intro than it does throughout the song? It feels like Young Thug's toned himself down because he knows he's on a NAV song. Bruh, what do I even have to say about that song? Yeah, I mean, it was like passable. The intro on that instrumental sounded a little bit more lively and like it had a bit more to it before the actual vocals came in. I wish it stayed that lively throughout because I feel like that would have added more to the track. The way it is, it just feels a bit empty, a bit lifeless to be honest. Even Thugger himself, like I said, it sounds like he toned himself down because he knew he was on a NAV song. He wasn't as wild or crazy on here as he usually is. He almost brought his vocals down to a bit more of a monotone to fit in with NAV, and I don't know, I was expecting more from a Young Thug feature to be honest. NAV on here, he was just NAV. He was just NAV. It is what it is. Track number 3, we have another feature on this track. The feature is Future. It's called My Business.
I'm boss, I'm out of my business. Open up the box, got bills in the kitchen. Owe me a bag, now I'm counting and getting. I'ma just let the pills do the work, I wanna think no more. Got a girl holding me down, I don't give a fuck about fucking team no more. Owe me a bag, now I'm counting and getting.
I can't hate on this one. I actually think it has kind of a nice vibe to it. Oh, Future and his and I can't complain. I kind of like it. Ooh. Alright, I like NAV on here, but Future is killing this. Okay. This is the first song I've actually really liked on here, including Turks, which is the next song on this album, but obviously I've already heard it because it's a single. I would say that this one, My Business, is my favourite track on the project out of all those, the first four. I like how the song has a happier vibe to it. It makes NAV sound less dead when there's a more upbeat melody to it, I guess. And I like that. In Future ate this one up with his verse. There was like a few bars where he went with that really high-pitched voice where you can just hear his voice cracking, because whenever that man tries to go like just a little bit higher than his speaking voice, his vocal cords give up on him. But, I mean, even that wasn't too bad. The rest of the verse, he ate it up. Just like NAV, he had a faster paced delivery throughout his verse, and NAV himself was enjoyable on this track too. I really enjoyed how this one sounded, and I could actually see myself adding it to a couple of playlists. I would say this has a stronger start to it than Bad Habits does. Compare those three to these three, and these three win, because in my opinion, the only good one out of those three tracks on Bad Habits was To My Grave. The other two were boring as hell. So let's move into the next track. Like I said, I have already heard this one. It was released as a single. It's the only single that was released before this project. It's Turks featuring Gunna and Travis Scott. I know a lot of people like this song. Like, even people that don't typically like NAV said that they liked him on this song and that he was good on it. I personally disagree. I tweeted out about it saying that Turks would be good if you take NAV off of it. And that wasn't me tweeting that just because that's like a hot take or whatever. That's genuinely how I feel about this song. But to me, he sounds very kind of robotic and uninteresting on this song. And I think Gunna was surprisingly good on here. He's my favourite part of this track, which I didn't expect because I'm not the biggest Gunna fan either. And Travis was cool, but he just kind of did his own thing like he tends to do on features. He's off in his own world, but he still sounded good on it. But it definitely could be worse. I'm not saying it's a bad song. The beat is really good though. Weezy killed it on this one. Took 20 pictures on my first vacay. I ain't picking up on my torso, baby. It does have a catchy flow to it. I'll give it that. It's got a catchy flow. I just don't like Nav's voice on this song. I like Gunna's sort of extended version of the flow Nav uses on this song, on his verse. Oh, I'm excited. Next up, we got track number 5, Brown Boy. For some reason, the second track Nav has titled Brown Boy. He's really hammering this thing home. But yeah, there we go. That was Turks. And, you know, I gave my opinions on that song before the track started. I think it's alright, but I don't really love it. But hey, like I said, we still haven't had a bad song on this project yet. We're doing okay. We're doing okay. Let's move into the next one. What I'm assuming will be the best track on this album. Track number 5, Brown Boy. Kind of car was he driving? That shit was clean. Try to catch him outside, but he peeling off the scene. I wonder what it feel like to live his life just for a day. He the one I hate the most, Brown Boy. Makes me sick when he bragging most, Brown Boy. Roaring up the block, I heard the noise. Think I live around the corner from the Brown Boy. You know what? This song isn't really great so far. But this is one I could see myself listening to with my friends and just having fun because it's such a meme. I'm also noticing this has a very similar concept to Did You See Nav from Perfect Timing, where he's rapping from the perspective of one of his haters.
Oh, I hate Nav. He's so rich.
Nav said all he do is get up and grind. Fuck am I doing in school? I'm wasting time. So if he get another plaque,
Wait, he's rapping from the perspective of one of his haters that's in high school? Didn't Nav say like on the intro that he didn't care what people think about him anymore?
Still live my mom and dad, I hate them both. If I listen to the Brown Boy, I might get some hope.
Oh.
Always gonna be there when there's nowhere for me to go.
Look, I don't think this is a good song, but I'm having a great time listening to this. The last 3 lines of verse 2 on this song were pure gold. If I listen to the Brown Boy, I might get some hope. He always gonna be there when there's nowhere for me to go. Can't deny his music, feel like drugs, I need a dose. This is one of the ones I'm talking about at the start where I said I either want this album to be surprisingly good or laughably bad. If the whole album was songs like this, I would have a blast. That was fun. That was fun to listen to. Like I said during it, that was basically just part 2 to Did You See NAV off of Perfect Timing, which is a song that took itself a lot more seriously when talking about this topic. I actually think Brown Boy did it better because it was more lighthearted. I'm a fan of the Brown Boy meme with NAV, and I've made fun of the fact that he mentions it many, many times before. So this is my song. This is my anthem. Let's move on to the next one. Another one that I actually am kind of excited for because it has a Lil Uzi Vert feature. And I think pretty much every NAV Uzi collaboration has been pretty good. And now I'm curious to see what they do on this one together. Track number 6, Status, featuring Lil Uzi Vert. I love when NAV drags a note out and you can just hear the auto-tune going like... He loves that tap flow, doesn't he? Like cock, cock, cock. I need a flash, she like the way I'm mixing up my rocks. Yeah, the diamonds here leave on my rocks. I sold over so I could fly. She keeps speaking that bitch, she a thot. Status. Lost my balance, but I'm okay. Status was like, NAV came through using the tap flow once again, where he just repeats what he says like 3 or 4 times at the end of a line. Pop, 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 mop, 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 cock, cock, cock. I would say he kind of got outshined by the feature again, but only marginally. I don't think Uzi was too amazing on this. My expectations weren't crazy high, but still sort of disappointed for a NAV Lil Uzi collaboration. It was whatever. Let's move on to the next one. Track number 7, Codeine, featuring Gunna. Why does your album have not 1 but 2 Gunna features, NAV? NAV really isn't gelling with the melodies well here. Yep. That was a skip. That drained all the energy out of me that the song Brown Boy gave to me. This was just straight up dull. That kind of jabby synth melody that kept going on throughout the whole track, something about it sounded really cheap. And then the way Nav's vocals blended with it was, well, they didn't blend with it at all. Gunna was nowhere near as good on here as he was on Turks. I don't see any need to come back to that one. I know I said it at the start, but it's really hitting me now that this is 18 songs long. And we're 7 in. The only track I've loved so far is My Business, and the only other track I've been super entertained by is Brown Boy. I really hope things start to liven up soon. Let's move on to the next one. Track number 8, Saint Laurent, with 3 T's. Okay, this could be interesting. Is this supposed to be like a smooth, sensitive track from NAV? Saint Laurent, more like Simp Laurent. That beat was made for someone with a much smoother voice to go over it. It's not happening as quickly as it did with Bad Habits, but the soul is slowly starting to get sucked out of me. These past 3 have been relatively sleep-inducing. So, let's move on to the next one. We're only at the halfway point. Track number 9, Coast to Coast. Nav, bring the notes. Like, just... I don't even know what to say. Didn't The Weeknd executively produce this album? You're telling me The Weeknd let Nav put this track on here? Oh my God, that was awful. I don't even know if I can say that one was laughably bad. That was just bad. I am so close to taking this off, Nav. What was that? Nav went with this really high-pitched, nasally delivery throughout this whole song, and you could just hear the auto-tune buckling under the amount of support that it had to give to this man's voice to at least try and make it sound like he could hit a note. That was the worst song on this project so far. I don't know if Nav was trying to sound energetic on that track, so he was thinking, okay, I'm gonna bring out the crazy high-pitched vocals on this one, I'm gonna rap a bit faster, the beat's got a faster tempo to it, the instruments are all really fast-paced on this song, but it didn't work. God, let's just move on to the next one. Track number 10, Run It Up, featuring Pop Smoke. Rest in peace, of course, to Pop Smoke.
Take my chain, watch the news next week, you can see their bodies turning up. Popping this money, got me burning that night, got some porcelain teeth, and I fucked them up. Throwing dirt my name, you gon' fuck around, get your homeboy touched. Going in the fridge, I ain't looking for a sunny D, I just want the purple stuff. Lots of bad habits, I'm popping off tags. I'ma fuck the game up when I drop back. Blowing off pills, 200 on the dash, I'm bending the corner, I almost crashed.
You like a faded, yeah. Me and nothing the Bugatti, moving too hard. Niggas know my name, they don't force claiming. When I walk in the spot, niggas know what y'all. No, I ain't 20, we showing them stars.
Not a bad song. Not bad. Can't complain too much about that song. Nav used what sounded like a pretty similar flow to Turks on this track, and I liked how it sounded over this instrumental. Pop Smoke was cool on here too, definitely a lot more chill than you usually hear him. Usually he's a lot more aggressive, isn't usually this laid back, but I still think it worked. I still think it worked pretty well on here. That's the best track we've had on this project for a while. Definitely better than Status, better than Codeine, better than Saint Laurent, much better than Coast to Coast. Let's move on to the next one, the second track with a Young Thug feature on this project. Track number 11, Spend It, featuring Young Thug.
Hit corners in the Porsche, I bend it. Big cash on noise, not ring. I don't care if you getting offended. I don't want problems, my buddy keep pull. I don't want to get no sentence. Everybody saying they want to old now, but they already stole my sound. I did a lot for my people. I made it cooler to be brown.
Who's stealing your sound, Nav? What sound?
Got canary yellows on the invoice. You try to piss on me. Money stacking up, no limit. I told her I like my bitch outside since I keep it chillin', yeah. I got it happening, quit it with silence, just like the president, yeah. Once I caught up on 5 stores. This a book, I don't know how to ride, go.
Oh, I really don't have the most to say about this project. I mean, it's another song where I kind of feel like Nav was outshone by the feature. I guess that's why there's a version of this album that exists where someone's cut Nav out of all of it, and they've made a feature-only version of this album. But yeah, Thugger definitely stood out a bit more on this track. He had some more of those wild vocals, which was missing on No Debate. He was just overall more entertaining on this song than he was on No Debate, and I definitely think it gave him the standout verse on this track. Nav on here was passable, but I do feel like he's starting to just sound the same on every single track. Rapping with a bit of a faster flow is not going to make all these songs entertaining, Nav. It's kind of crazy looking at this track list. We're 11 songs in and barely any tracks have really had a full-on impact on me. Let's move on to the next one. It looks like we'll have another good feature on this one because it's track number 12, Recap, featuring Don Toliver.
I'm on that dirty road. Used to hit the block where it's hot, but I can't no more. Maybe if I start a fire, all days on at the motivation.
12 songs in My Business and Brown Boy are still the only tracks that have really stood out to me. Again, like Status, it was a bit underwhelming based on what I was expecting. I thought Don Toliver would be really nice on here, but the first half of the chorus sounded a little awkward with how it was mixed into the beat. The second half of it was nicer, but wasn't anything too crazy. And then Nav, his vocals, they just haven't been that great throughout this project. They've been awful on some songs. And this is one of the songs on the worst end of the spectrum of Nav vocals. 6 more tracks left. I can push through. I can do this. Track number 13, She Hurtin.
I know you got some insecurities, your last man left you scarred. I wouldn't change a thing about you, girl, I like you just the way you are. Watch for a different color Birkins, the way you make me feel is worth it. Searching for a girl like you, I've been searching.
It's weird, this is like a different type of boring compared to Bad Habits. Bad Habits was boring in a very monotone, drowsy way. This album tries to be brighter and more upbeat, but it somehow still manages to sound boring.
Lots of new rappers coming out with my sound. If I had a
No, they're not. They're not, Nav.
some more than what you see on the surface.
You know what? I think it's time to accept that I used to enjoy certain Nav songs, and I enjoyed them up to a point, but I've had my run with Nav's music. Sounds like he goes in the booth and pinches his nose when he's rapping.
She heard it. You're trying to make her sad. She heard it.
Then he's got the ad-libs.
Skrrr.
I don't even know. I don't even know what I can say in this reaction anymore. I'm just bullying Nav at this point. I'm sorry for cyberbullying you, sir. This isn't the same album as Bad Habits. Like I said, it tries to be brighter and more upbeat and more fast-paced, but somehow it kind of almost fails at all of those things because it still is boring. It's still dull. So many of these songs I could completely do without. She Hurtin is one of those. Track number 14, Overdose.
Don't know why they hate me since I came on the scene. Don't nobody know what it feel like to be me. And it was all my problems' fault. Sometimes I hope I overdose. Just to get all of my problems solved. My jeweler told me that he want like 30 for the chain. Told him send the invoice, I ain't sweating over petty change. Happiness gon' come and go and balance with the pain. I just got to, and I still feel like I should get involved.
I can appreciate the subject matter of that song. It's another one of those Nav songs about money can't buy you happiness, and he kind of dives into some of the reasons why he takes drugs on here. I can appreciate the subject matter, but again, sonically, I just want to sleep, man. Maybe this song would be alright outside of the context of the album, but just after so many tracks that have also been pretty dull to me, it's like, it really felt like it dragged. I don't know, this album feels like it's dragging already. Overdose wasn't an awful song, but I'm really struggling to invest into a song like this at this point. It did give me the kind of vibe that Nav gave off on his first album. So, I mean, I guess that's cool. I'm really just drained by the overall album at this point. It's not even really this song's fault, it's just the album preceding it. Let's move on to the next song, track number 15, Did You Wrong. DJ Mustard, okay. Or sorry, just Mustard now. Nav's melodies are actually a bit smoother on this song. He's not trying too hard to go outside of his range. To me, this is one of the better songs on here. Because it's got that Mustard production, it has a bit more of an upbeat summer sound to it. Ooh. It's been a while since a track on this album made me feel sort of alive, and that's what this one did. I can kind of see now that there's not really any cohesiveness to this project. I guess, to be fair to Bad Habits, it was a more cohesive project. It did stick with a more consistent sound throughout it, whereas this one is just doing whatever, pulling from a few different places, with the instrumentals at least. So here you've got this random, almost summery sounding song produced by Mustard, just jammed into the track list. It was weird on this album, but I kind of enjoyed the song. And I thought Nav's vocals during the chorus were actually pretty smooth. It didn't sound like the autotune had to prop him up too much. And I don't know, I just think this one had a nice little vibe to it. Did You Wrong for me is one of the better songs on here. It actually managed to feel a bit more lively. Rather than trying to have the elements of a lively song but failing, this one to me actually did sound more lively. Moving towards the final stretch of the album, thank God. Track number 16, MySpace. Oh, that kind of reminds me of Call Me.
You don't understand, I said I need my space. Why you all up in my face? I can't let my feelings change. If I had a choice, I'd trade the money for the fame. Are you down to make this work with me or not?
I mean, I guess the chorus on that one was kind of nice. I guess it's cool that he's trying to have a bit more of an emotional sound on some of these tracks here, but 18 songs. 18 songs was a bad choice, Nav. It's not an awful song, but I really don't need chill Nav towards the end of this. I am feeling sleepy. I'm feeling sleepy. Let's move on to the next one. Track number 17, the second last track on this project, No Ice featuring Lil Durk.
Ain't talking about exhaust when I say we got 4 pipes, yeah. My city feel like Chirac, gotta keep my pole tight, yeah. I won't rob nobody, I believe in karma. But it's off with his head if you try to harm us. It blew a man when it bounced back and half shit was cut. Heart be
I do appreciate the attempts to switch up the flow and the delivery on here. I'll give credit to that.
You stunning, you flexing, you edit up. Got robbed, but you on me and said it. Don't stop at your boundaries. It's time niggas down the street.
Production was kind of cool on that song. Lil Durk, I wasn't the biggest fan of Lil Durk on here. To be honest, I don't think I've ever had a Lil Durk verse stand out to me when he uses autotune. One of the only verses I've heard where he doesn't use autotune is one of the only Lil Durk verses I've heard that really stood out to me. And that was on No Auto with Lil Uzi Vert. I thought he went really hard on there, so if any of you can recommend any other Lil Durk songs that sound like No Auto, I'd love to hear them down below. NAV was NAV, as to be expected. I don't even know what to think about this album because it just feels all over the place. Like, I know what to think of it, but I don't know how bad necessarily I think this project is, just because of how weird and messy it feels. Let's just move on to the final track on this project. We have reached the end. Track number 18, Proud of Me, with a question mark at the end. And the answer to that question is, after this project, no.
Jeans jingling, got her wet like a pool. I'ma go ahead and dive in. Grab myself a cup with a little batch and sit back and watch shit dissolve.
I feel like his flows on this album, for the most part, either sound like the flow from Turks or the flow from Leaders. This one is the flow from Leaders.
I just hope you proud of me now. Every time you see me, diamonds hitting home runs, batter up. I'm new rap sound like my clones. You would swear it was me when they open they mouth.
New rappers don't sound like you, Nav. They don't.
Real friends know if I ain't picking up my phone, probably cause I've been high all day. I screamed and believe in me. I just hope that you proud of me now.
You know what? It's not a bad way to close out the project. And there we go. That's the end of Good Intentions. Okay, it's decent as an outro song. It does kind of bring things to a close nicely. Even if, as you could tell, I didn't like this project throughout most of it, Nav seems pretty proud of it, and if he's proud of this body of work, that's cool. You know, if he loves how this music sounds and he's happy to have it out there, that's good for him. But the point is, Nav is clearly proud of this album, and he's asking the people that didn't believe in him if they're proud of him now, basically, after hearing it. Not one of the worst slower songs on here. It was an alright track. It was an alright track, to be honest. So, what are my overall thoughts on Good Intentions by Nav? What a strange album to come back with after a month of not uploading. This was a weird one to begin with. But for the most part, this was just an album that still managed to be boring, even though it was clearly trying not to be. My issue with Bad Habits was that so much of it was so downbeat and moody and just lifeless that almost none of it stood out, and it was an incredibly boring listen. With this album, it clearly tried to be a bit brighter. It had more variety, but in a kind of messy way. There was tracks just thrown in at random points that were a bit more upbeat, and then right after that you cut to a song that's got that old school, chilled out, slow Nav sound, and it just kind of flip-flops back and forth. You know, there's Did You Wrong, which is thrown in there, which has that summer banger vibe to it, which is very odd compared to the rest of this album. It's an album that tries to sound brighter and tries to sound more lively and energetic, but it was still pretty boring for the most part. I honestly don't know if I would say that this is worse than Bad Habits or not, because they're both, in my opinion, pretty bad albums in their own ways. Let's go through my favorite and least favorite tracks before we talk about this album a bit more. My favorite songs on this one were definitely track number 3, My Business, featuring Future. That was probably like the best song on here. I'm putting Brown Boy on my favorite songs because it actually got a reaction out of me. I enjoyed the song. I thought it was funny. And then, like, Did You Wrong? I thought that was a nice song, nice little bounce to it. Nav didn't sound too annoying or nasally on there. And yeah, those are the highlights on this album for me. And one of them is a highlight because it's entertainingly bad. As for least favorite songs, oh boy, we got options. I would say Codeine, because that was really the first deathly boring song on the album. Coast to Coast, because that was just that shouldn't exist. Probably She Hurtin'. Throw that on the least favorites. MySpace, I guess. There's so much of this album that just feels completely forgettable to me. With this one, Nav just came through with a really forgettable, pretty dull project in my opinion, with a couple just really bad songs, entertainingly bad songs sprinkled in there. I honestly would have liked more of that, rather than just the kind of mediocre dullness we got on here. And it feels like the more and more NAV projects that come out, the more and more I'm just going off of his voice. Like, I'm really starting to dislike the way his vocals sound. I didn't mind them at first. I know a lot of people hate NAV's voice, but throughout his first few projects, I really didn't mind it all that much. But now on this project, it's really just hitting me how nasally and robotic and how airlifted by the autotune it is, that it is starting to bug me. And then there's also the issue with the flows on here. A lot of them, it just sounds like he thought faster flows equals good song, but that's really not the case. There's not really much that's new or interesting in NAV's lyrics. There's not really anything that's surprising or interesting with NAV's flows. Outside of a few songs, there's not really anything that's surprising or interesting about a lot of the production, to be honest. There's not anything that's surprising or interesting about NAV's voice. To sum it up, it's an album that's a worst album of the year contender. I definitely feel my #1 NAV stan status dropping more and more with each album that this man brings out. We need perfect timing too. But hey, there's also the deluxe version of this album, which is its own project, just like Uzi did with Eternal Take. I actually find it kind of funny how much NAV's release strategy with this is similar to Eternal Take. 18 songs on the regular version, 14 songs on the deluxe version, which is its own project. Exactly the same as Uzi did. But yeah, I guess I'll probably do a reaction to Brown Boy 2 as well. Maybe. I'm not too sure if I want to react to it after hearing this project. But who knows? It could be better. Let me know down in the comments below if you want to see a reaction to Brown Boy 2. Maybe I'll do that. I'm not going to promise anything. Because yeah, Good Intentions was just kind of draining to listen to. And so little of it stood out. Referring back to what I said at the start for the millionth time, I wanted this to be surprisingly good or laughably bad. Most of the album fit into neither of those categories, and therefore it's one that I just found super dull. So guys, that is what I think of Good Intentions by NAV from my first listen. What do you guys think about this project? Let me know down in the comments below. Let me know if you agreed with what I said, if you disagreed, and what your favourite and least favourite songs were. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram if you're feeling like it under the name CDTV Productions. That's all I've got to say for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next one. And this is CDTVThaG, signing out.